Fate had already killed her once. She wouldn't let it happen again. Betrayed by her stepsister Na's obsession with marrying rich, Hannah lost her life for trying to stop a reckless scheme. But when she woke up on the very day it all began, she knew this was her second chance. No longer the naive, accommodating sister, she was ready to turn the game on those who had wronged her, because this time, she wasn't just fighting for survival. She was rewriting her destiny. Some people believe fate is a chain that binds us to predetermined outcomes, while others see it as clay to be molded by their own hands. Hannah's stepsister Na was firmly in the latter category, a dreamer obsessed with romance novels where ordinary women married domineering CEOs through chance encounters. Her favorite strategy, deliberately losing her ID in crowded tourist spots, hoping a wealthy bachelor would find it and fall madly in love with her. Hannah had tried reasoning with Na, warning her about the dangers of letting fictional stories cloud her judgment. But Na remained convinced this was her path to changing her destiny, insisting she was so outstanding that any CEO would surely fight for her affection. Despite Hannah's efforts to protect her stepsister from her own delusions, tragedy struck. When someone actually succeeded in marrying a tycoon after losing their ID, Na blamed Hannah for interfering with her plans and, in a fit of rage, took Hannah's life. Fate, however, had other plans. Hannah reopened her eyes to find herself back in time, on the very day Na planned to execute her scheme. The universe had granted her a second chance, one she wouldn't waste. Armed with knowledge of the future, Hannah was determined to chart a different course through these treacherous waters. In this new timeline, Na quickly fell into old patterns. Soon after supposedly getting married, she called Hannah demanding enormous sums of money, $80 million as a celebration gift and another $30 to $40 million as a bonus for changing their address. But this time, Hannah responded with cold laughter. No longer would she be the kind, accommodating stepsister who paid for others' whims. This time, she refused outright, telling Na to ask her mother for money instead. The shadows of the past stretched into the present when Hannah's father urgently summoned her home for a reunion meal. Upon arrival, she faced immediate hostility from Na, who berated her for lack of gratitude and demanded repayment for alleged jewelry purchases totaling tens of millions. Hannah's response was simple and decisive. She tore up the receipts and laughed. During this tense family gathering, Hannah was introduced to Na's new husband Kyle, a slovenly man who lounged on the sofa with his feet on the table, emanating an unpleasant odor. Despite his repulsive demeanor, Na doted on him, calling him baby and rushing to comfort him when Hannah refused to acknowledge their relationship. The situation escalated when Kyle demanded Hannah hand over her house as a wedding gift. Hannah's father supported this outrageous request, claiming Kyle was the heir to the prestigious Henry Corporation and that surrendering one house for a lifetime of glory was a worthwhile exchange. Hannah coldly refused, stating that the house had been left to her by her deceased mother and was legally hers alone. She retrieved a bracelet Na had taken, firmly declared her ownership, and left. What Hannah hadn't anticipated was Na's persistence. Upon returning home, she discovered Na had used a spare key to enter her house. Her personal belongings, expensive bags and jewelry, had been piled carelessly by the cabinet, with Na declaring them payment for the bonus debt Hannah supposedly owed her. In the living room sat Kyle and his mother, looking smugly content. As tensions escalated and Na continued to boast about her future status as the family's mistress, Hannah reached her breaking point. She retreated to the kitchen and emerged with a hidden chainsaw, originally kept for self-defense. The roar of the machine silenced the living room. Hannah coldly informed the intruders that if they wanted to take what was hers, she was prepared to go all the way. The group panicked and fled, with Na screaming accusations of insanity. In the aftermath of this confrontation, Hannah discovered something chilling: her ID was missing. Knowing Na's obsession with marriage schemes involving lost IDs, a cold realization crept down her spine. The wheel of time continued to turn, each spoke revealing new depths of deception and unexpected allies. Through cunning strategy and unwavering resolve, Hannah would navigate this twisted game of identity, determined to rewrite her fate and claim the justice that had been denied her in her previous life. The confrontation at the marriage registration office escalated into chaos as Hannah seized a chair and smashed it against Na's head. With righteous fury, she reclaimed her stolen ID and tore the partially stamped marriage certificate to shreds. When Na attempted to flee, Hannah grabbed her, forcing her stepsister's head to the ground. The slovenly man's protests were quickly silenced by another blow from Hannah's improvised weapon, leaving him wailing about injustice while Hannah threatened worse consequences should he continue. Turning her attention back to Na, who now cowered like a scolded child, Hannah placed the chair atop her head with menacing calm. Her stepsister's facade crumbled completely, her tears flowing freely as she claimed she had only wanted Hannah to have a good marriage. Hannah considered the possibility that her own father might have given her ID to Na, a betrayal that severed the last thread of trust between them. With calculated precision, Hannah delivered several more slaps to Na's face, extracted a trembling promise that such treachery would never be repeated, and reminded her that despite everything, they would always be sisters, but next time, there would be no mercy. The commotion attracted police attention, and the trio was taken to the station. The slovenly man received detention for 3 days and a warning to stay away from Hannah, while Na faced only education and brief detention. In the blessed month without Na's presence, Hannah's life regained a semblance of calm. When her father called attempting reconciliation, Hannah recognized the hollow gesture for what it was, not genuine remorse, but merely an attempt to secure his own interests. In this new timeline, equipped with wisdom from her past life, Hannah remained unmoved by his manipulations. After her release, Na quickly entangled herself with the old man's family again. His mother created public scenes demanding the return of the bride price, but Na had already spent the money on a car for Kyle. Desperate and debt-ridden, Na repeatedly pressured Hannah to marry the old man, describing him as a blessing for multiple lifetimes. Hannah's refusal was absolute, blocking all contact with her delusional stepsister. The tapestry of fate revealed new patterns when Na, increasingly desperate to prepare her dowry, stormed into Hannah's workplace at Henry Corporation. In a spectacular display of arrogance, she smashed Hannah's computer and proclaimed herself the future mistress of the company. Hannah and her colleagues watched this madwoman with stunned disbelief. Kyle stood awkwardly by, clearly uncomfortable with his wife's delusional claims, but unwilling to correct her. Hannah understood his position. He was merely leeching off Na, and any show of backbone might jeopardize his meal ticket. With calm efficiency, Hannah texted Liam, the legitimate chairman of Henry Corporation, alerting him to this attempt to seize his company. His reply indicated amusement and curiosity rather than concern. Meanwhile, Na continued her tirade, demanding Hannah kneel and apologize or face termination once Kyle took control. Prodded by his wife, Kyle reluctantly joined the charade, claiming ownership of the company and ordering Hannah to resign immediately. The theater of absurdity reached its climax when Liam himself appeared, his chiseled face and cold authority immediately changing the atmosphere. With elegant disdain, he questioned Kyle's claim of being another heir to the corporation. Kyle's panic was instant and revealing, stammering, "brother," in recognition while Liam coldly denied any familial connection. Hannah observed this exchange with quiet satisfaction, interjecting only to remind everyone that Director Henry had countless illegitimate children, Kyle being merely one among many with no inheritance rights. Na, still oblivious to reality, boldly confronted Liam, declaring her husband the legitimate son of Director Henry. Kyle's desperate attempt to silence her came too late. As the truth dawned on Na, her rage turned toward Kyle. She smashed items on the desk, demanding to know why he had deceived her about his status before their marriage. While security dragged the couple away, Na's fantasy world crumbled visibly around her. She muttered in disbelief, unable to reconcile her dream of marrying a CEO, hero from the sky, with the harsh reality of her husband's deception. After their departure, Liam stood calmly beside Hannah, suggesting they strike decisively against such shameless people to prevent future problems. His gaze, surprisingly gentle as a spring breeze, contrasted with his reputation for sharp words. Hannah welcomed his plan to catch the troublemakers red-handed while addressing company traitors simultaneously. That evening, Hannah deliberately left her computer at home and, as anticipated, witnessed Na and Kyle sneaking into her room. The trap was set, and soon her stepsister and brother-in-law began a live stream, publicly accusing Hannah of wrongdoing. Na played the victim masterfully, tears streaming down her face as she crafted a tale of betrayal. The wheel of fate continued turning, each revolution bringing Hannah closer to justice and retribution for all she had suffered. The chess pieces were moving exactly as she had planned, and soon her opponents would discover they had been playing a game whose rules they never understood. Years passed after Hannah's final act of rebellion against her father. The monthly deliveries of sanitary pads continued, a silent reminder of her refusal to be manipulated any longer. Each package represented her freedom, purchased at the cost of family ties that had never truly existed. Hannah's life with Liam flourished. As the legitimate mistress of Henry Corporation, she guided the company through expanding markets and technological innovations. Their partnership, built on mutual respect rather than manipulation, became the foundation of their success. While the business world buzzed with their accomplishments, Hannah kept her private life carefully guarded, the lessons of her past firmly embedded in her decisions. Meanwhile, in the shadowy corners of society, Na's life spiraled through cycles of abuse and desperate attempts at reinvention. After prison, she had tried to craft a new narrative for herself, positioning her choices as romantic rather than calculating. Marry first, love later, she proclaimed to anyone who would listen, as though her past actions had been guided by innocent idealism rather than greed. The sisters' paths crossed occasionally, like comets on opposing orbits. Each encounter revealed the deepening divide between them, Hannah's quiet confidence contrasting sharply with Na's brittle bravado. Where Hannah had built, Na had only destroyed, including herself. As seasons changed and years accumulated, Hannah occasionally reflected on the strange symmetry of their lives. Both had sought security and success, but through fundamentally different means. In quiet moments, she wondered if Na ever recognized the pattern of her own making, the constant grasping for shortcuts leading inevitably to loss. Time, that relentless sculptor, continued its work. Hannah's father aged into bitter obscurity, surrounded by cardboard boxes of unused feminine products, monuments to his failed manipulations. Na drifted between relationships, each one echoing the transactional nature of her worldview, each ending more swiftly than the last. One autumn afternoon, as golden light filtered through the windows of her office, Hannah received news that her father had passed away. The lawyer handling his meager estate revealed a surprising detail. Among his possessions was a journal, filled with entries that began shortly after Hannah had refused his demands for support. The journal painted a portrait of a man slowly awakening to the consequences of his choices. His writing evolved from indignant rage to reluctant reflection, and finally to something approaching regret. The final entry, dated just days before his death, contained a single sentence: "Hannah was right to refuse me." This unexpected epilogue shifted something in Hannah's understanding of her family's tragedy. Not forgiveness, precisely, but a recognition that even the most damaged among us might glimpse the truth before the end. She arranged for a simple funeral, attended only by herself and Liam. As for Na, reports reached Hannah that her sister had finally found a kind of peace, not through marriage or schemes, but through a community service program she joined after her last relationship imploded. Working with troubled youth, Na seemed to have found purpose in warning others away from the path she had traveled. Hannah never sought a reconciliation with her sister. Some bridges, once burned, leave only ashes. Yet she anonymously established a foundation supporting the community program where Na worked, ensuring its continued operation. It was neither forgiveness nor punishment, merely an acknowledgement that healing takes many forms. Years later, when Hannah and Liam's daughter asked about her aunt, Hannah shared not the bitter details of betrayal, but the broader truth, that people often create their own prisons long before society builds walls around them. That revenge, even when justified, carries its own burden. That the most powerful response to cruelty is not greater cruelty, but the determination to live well. And in the end, that was Hannah's true victory, not the wealth or position she'd acquired, but the wisdom to recognize that the greatest freedom comes from breaking cycles rather than perpetuating them. Her life, once defined by others' expectations and manipulations, had become entirely her own creation. As she watched her daughter grow into a confident young woman, unburdened by the toxic family dynamics of the past, Hannah realized that this was her most meaningful achievement, not surviving the storm, but ensuring it would not touch the next generation.